Everyday life issues broken down to help you build your own opinions on the issues that matter most. Coming to you from Austin, Texas, this is The Deciding Factor with your host, Alton Hill and John Herzog.
Hey everyone, I'm John.
I'm Alton.
And we are doing The Deciding Factor. So if you're new to the show, welcome. We've got video now and we're doing audio. And now you can see Alton's face since we couldn't get it working last time.
So beautiful.
But today's topic is actually going to be negotiations. I am not an expert in it. I've done some of it, especially dealing with job-related negotiations. But I guess I'm going to lean on Alton to give me a little more of his insight. And then also I looked up a guy that is a negotiation expert. So we will go over what he says. And but you're hobbling around over there, Alton. What's going on there?
Yeah, so I strained my calf muscle a little bit, and then I thought it was better. And then so I pretended like it was better, but it turns out it wasn't. So I actually re-injured it again. And it's actually much more painful now than it was the first time that I did it. But I thought since we had a podcast and I've been icing my foot, I've got an ice chest full of ice water, actually. And
I thought you were really thirsty to begin with.
Well, it can't get hot here in this room, but yeah. So I'm gonna put my foot in this ice chest here, and it's really cold. Oh, so we'll see how long I can keep my foot in there.
But you went to the chiropractor and he hurt you more, right?
No, it was actually really good. I thought, what is this chiropractor going to be able to do with my foot? But I went in there and it was really stiff, and man, felt so much better after I went in there. He used this funny little gun that kind of it's like you push a button and it loads a spring and then it pops. And so it sends some crazy frequencies. And anyway, it was, obviously it wasn't better after I got off the table, but it was much more, I could move it a lot better. So I could actually hobble around. But yeah, this water's cold, but I'm going to focus. Yeah, so negotiation, I think for me, I'm not going to call myself an expert, but I think a lot of people just don't even think about it. And so really, for me on this topic, I just wanted to bring some awareness to it and some little things that you can do to be aware and to utilize, because it's just like our whole podcast, right, John? We're talking about decisions and making decisions, and you have to make a decision. We're all in negotiations all the time, whether we want to call it that or not. It may not be a hostage situation, right? But I have 4 daughters that I'm constantly having to negotiate with, right? And I
have to negotiate with you all the time just to get you to be on the show on time.
It's true, right? So we're all in these positions, and I think if we just take a little bit more thought, can definitely give you the upper hand, or at least better position to start from. So
nice,
good stuff.
So I guess let me start with a story that I have for negotiation. I can't use names or tell you who this person is, but somebody I know very closely. They had a job, or they currently had a job, and they were offered a new job with another company, and they gave them the offer, mm-hmm. and the offer was only like $3,000 more.
Okay.
And keep in mind, this person's not in jeopardy of losing their job.
Sure.
And everything's great. So there's no need to. So it would be purely for either the benefits or increase in salary.
Yeah.
Or maybe a little more funner job. Funner is not a word, but yeah.
Well, we're from Texas, so
yeah. But anywho, so this person, I tell them about it because they told me about the offer, and so I started to talk to them about it and saying, what's the pros, what's the cons, and everything was good. And then all of a sudden, it was like the benefits. The benefits were going to cost them, $2,000 a month for their family. And that's ridiculous because they've got a full-time job that they can get benefits for. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, you're only getting a $3,000 increase. Well, based on what this person was already making, I said, anytime you go to a job, it's always been taught to me, and it's something I always share with any of my friends or family, is always go for at least a 10% increase. Otherwise, stay where you're at. And part of that thing is because you have the upper hand. If they want you, they'll pay for you to get there. So unfortunately, this person didn't listen to me. They ended up just accepting the offer. They took the $3,000 increase, and they were perfectly fine. But they didn't even ask the question.
So, why do you think that is? Because I'm hearing what you're saying, and I've had these same conversations where people, just friends, colleagues, associates, whatever, say, oh yeah, I'm going to get this new job. And I'm like, asking for a lot of money. And they're like, well, like they're offended that I suggested it even. And I'm like, what did they say? No. But then, I don't know. Why do you think that this person, didn't want to ask for more? Why do you think that is?
Well, some people have this non-confrontational characteristic about them. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so even just asking a simple question like that stresses them out and they can't handle it. But I'm like, all you have to do is just say, hey, it makes no sense for me to just take this kind of an offer. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then to top it all off, in the end, this person had to then decline the offer and stick with their normal job because they couldn't get over the health insurance benefit.
Right. It just wasn't a good offer.
Right.
Right.
So, there's other ways that I think they could have figured out the health insurance issue, but still $3,000 to move to a job. And on top of this person said that the job that they were going to go to, they would have to use their head a whole lot more. Whereas the job they have currently, man, they can, sleep through half their work and still be awesome at their job. So,
yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's maybe the first thing that we should point out. Ask for what you want. If you say the word negotiation, I think people are thinking that there's this back and forth. But I think a lot of us don't even start there, right? It's just oh, that's what you offered me? Okay. Whereas, you're not, it's you're not even in the game, the game's fixing to start and you just back out, which is not going to serve you. Now, in the case of a job, which I think that that's probably the most applicable to everyone, and what they're thinking is oh, I want to negotiate a larger salary, better benefits. That's where we think of it a lot. And I think when I've approached, the W-2 employee type thing, I always felt like that was the only time, not the only, but that's the best time to be the most efficient with your pay raise. Like you mentioned, and I've heard that same thing, 10%, don't make a move for less than 10%, which I think is reasonable. But I think depending on what you're doing, when you make that switch, that's the time where you can get the 10%, where ask your current employer, hey, I need a 10% bump. Yeah. Right? They're like, nah, maybe. I've literally got less than half a percent bump. In a meeting where they're reviewing your performance and, performance is great and we love you, Alton, and here's 30 more cents an hour. And I'm just like, really? Yeah. Why did we even do this? You just wasted all of our times. Right? And so that, in that moment, you don't really have a lot. What am I? No, I need you to, I'm asking for 35 cents an hour increase, right? It's that's not the time. So when you're in that, getting a new job, if you don't ask, you're leaving so much money on the table, I think. And I see it time and time again. It's like you said, they don't even ask. And it's
But here's the problem. So that same person, all they had to do was ask the question, but they didn't think about the other side, So
what do you mean?
So if I'm that hiring manager, I'm thinking I told them the range is X to X.
Yeah.
And I chose the bottom part of that. And that's what I offered her. So now what? You know, the manager themselves are going to start as low as they can. Why would they want to pay you the max?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Unless they thought you were going to get scared off. But they asked that person asked the question to the hiring manager, and the hiring manager now has to determine, how bad do I really want this person? Like they might walk away.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So they have a lot more to lose. I have this person that I really want, that I sought out, that has a job.
Yeah.
What, you know?
Yeah. No, I think that's great, because so I want to talk about two instances where I feel like I really succeeded in this job career negotiation. In both scenarios, I was employed. So when you're employed, I think that definitely gives you an upper hand in the job situation. And you know, I read up. I've read a few books on negotiating and just how to, you know, influence. Right, famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Was it the Trump one?
I have read The Art of the Deal, and it's a great book. I think that's less about negotiation, more about planning and understand. I mean, the deals that he put together are just incredible, but definitely a great book. But there's other books out there and podcasts you can listen to, and you know, when I've gone into these two stories that I'll share, one of the things that they said, like, you need to have a number that you want, and you need to be confident in that number, and it should not be even. So I remember one time, I think I was making like under 50K, and I was going to make a move, and I'm like, man, I want a lot more money. And so I picked this number, 71,500. That was my number. And it was an odd number because I had calculated that was what I needed to make the move from this other job. To be clear, I think I was being underpaid in the first job, and that company was like going down. So really, I wanted this other job, and I got this offer. And the way these guys did it, they were like, you know, we can only offer you like 60 at the most. And I was like, I need 71.5. And they were like,
okay, bye.
And they were like, that's a lot. You know, that's way more than we were planning on paying for this position. Okay, good. Right? It's fine. Like, now I feel like I'm in the right spot, and now we have to figure out, well, how do we get that? So you got somebody who's sticker shock with the price. Roger that. But to your point, John, he wants something, right? What does he want? And that is, to me, the key to the negotiation, right? Is understanding, what do they want and what do I have to give them? And then how am I articulating that? So in this place, I was interviewing for like some optical technician or something, which it's not like a common thing. And so I'm like, I went down the list of qualifications that I had that you're just not going to find these qualifications for what I had. It was the perfect fit, and they were going to have to make a lot of concessions if they had just hired a bunch of other people. I mean, I was the perfect candidate for this, and he was being pressured by his bosses to get something done, right? So they're having to fill this position. So he's in a bind that he has to produce results. It's a new company, it's a startup, it's growing. And it turns out later I learned that this guy was on his way out. Like after a couple months after I joined, he's gone, you know? So I didn't know that at the time, but we never know that, right? So I said, look, this is what you need. And I reminded him of this, and I explained to him how I was going to make his life so much better. And it wasn't going to be cheap, but it was going to solve the problem that he was trying to solve, right? And anyway, so they ended up giving me the job. It's like they didn't even interview anybody else.
But what were you thinking during that whole time? Were you worried about, hey, they're not going to take me and I'm going to be stuck here or end up unemployed? Like what was going through your head?
So like one of the things that I learned is like when you're negotiating, you can't sheepishly declare what you want. Like, well, I was kind of hoping that, I went in there and I was like, look, I'm at a job. I'm happy. If you want me to drive further, if you want me to work longer, this is a startup. So I know how startups work. You're going to ask for overtime. Not like I need this. This is going to make it happen. And in exchange for that, these are all the things that you're going to get. And so you have to come in there really confident. And for me, I'm fine with him saying, dude, I don't know who you think you are, but that's way too much money. And then I say, well, what do you think is not too much? And maybe we can start there. One job I had, I told him that I wanted a lot of money, and they were like, you are way underqualified for this. And I said, that's cool, but I'm a quick study. So how about this? I take a huge pay cut, and you sign a paper that says in 6 months you give me what I asked for because I'll be worth it. And so I took this like tiny pay cut. Well, I mean, I actually took a pay cut to make this move, but then in 6 months, they gave me, it was like, I don't know, $1,500 or $2,000 a month bump.
You were that confident in yourself.
Yeah, man, every job you have to learn what to do, and I've always been like trying to over deliver, and I'm not afraid to work hard. So like whatever you need me to do, I'm going to figure it out. And that's like a skill set that I know that I have is to figure things out, but you have to have the confidence and you have to take a little bit of risk. But if you do, I think it's been rewarded. And every time I've told someone a crazy number, it's just always worked for me once I get in there and do the interview and ask. Actually, I had forgotten about that first startup that I negotiated that salary. But yeah, my salary doubled and then almost it quadrupled from the original one that I started within a year because I took that risk. So for me, it was great. And then that optical tech position, slayed that one. That one was great. And I even got more raises after that. Then this other company called me, tried to hire me away. And I told them it was like $100K or just something insane that I didn't even think that they were going to take. I was like, there's no way they're going to pay me this. And they're like, man, Alton, this is kind of ridiculous. And I'm like, well, like, look at the qualifications. I'm going to kill this job, like, here's all the reasons why I'm worth it. And I was willing to look at that and know what he wanted, right? Because that's what it's all about. What do you want? What do you need? How can I sell you the idea that I'm it. I'm your Prince Charming. I'm the one you've been waiting for. Then the price doesn't really matter as much, I think.
Talking about all these job interviews and things like that makes me think about the one question that I've asked and several other HR people always ask is, well, why do you want this job? The incorrect answer is because I need a job.
Show me the money, Jerry.
But it's just funny that, that's one of the questions. The other questions they do tend to ask is more geared towards this negotiation, which is what salary range are you looking for? Or they'll ask you, well, what do you currently make?
Oh yeah. What do you currently make?
Now I would never answer that. I'm like, yeah. I'm not going to discuss any pay history between me and any employer.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is tricky, the whole, what's the range? Because it depends on, I guess, how desperate you are to get out, right?
Yeah, I have heard that before where they really just wrenched me and I really wanted the job and I told them what I made and I regret doing that.
Mm-hmm. You put all the cards on the deck, so now they know what to play with, right?
Yeah, and that was a hard lesson, but I learned it, and
it's tough. I mean, doing interviews at times can be stressful, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's the stress tactic that some of the recruiters will do, and oh man, I end up laughing more than anything because I know what they're doing.
Sure.
And I screw up that interview because, number one, I don't care for anybody that's going to interview like that. But, I'm laughing and they're, well, why are you laughing? What makes this so funny? Just because I know what you're doing right now and it's not really my style.
Yeah. And I think another tactic, just while we're on the job interview subject, is that
yes, blow that burp right into that mic.
I've sat around like a lot of long tables, where you're just getting grilled in these interviews, and I think that's like what you're talking about, the stress, and then when I like, my little coping mechanism is I look at all of these people and I think, I already have this job. These people are going to be my friends. And so I'm like breaking down their personality and imagining that we're already friends. And now this is kind of a game, right? Because if you get the job, that's what happens, right? And you're going to look back and be like, oh man, this guy, he interviews really well. Oh, this guy, he's kind of a jerk. But this guy, like, he's over at my house having barbecue. And for me, that always kind of, okay, I can talk to these guys because they're like my future friends now. And if they're not, who cares anyway, right? It's a good tactic, I think. But I think a lot of it goes back to knowing what you want, having the confidence to kind of walk in there and know your worth, or at least fake it. Like, can you not fake some confidence, for whatever the interview, 4 hours, or, whatever the interview period is? Can you not just pretend for a little bit, and see where it gets you? And that's what I would challenge people. Like, especially now, right? Like, a lot of people are out of work right now, maybe looking. If you don't have a job, that definitely hurts, but you can still have confidence that you're an awesome human and that you're worth something, and see if the market, will take it.
So what was your other one? You had one that was not job related, right? Selling a car or something?
Yeah, right. It's
wrecking your bike again.
Negotiating when you're purchasing things. I've also found, and why I wanted to talk about this, like I mentioned with the job interviews. So when I bought a house, I think it was, I don't know, maybe one of the houses that I bought, I actually, number one, if you just go and go to Wells Fargo to try to get a mortgage, they're just going to give you that, right? So I always, and I think we've said it on the podcast too, like, go find a mortgage broker. They can source multiple lenders and they're going to give you the best rate, right? Like, they're getting paid on commission. It's not somebody that's just sitting there hourly, like reading, check X, right? So you get a better deal with a mortgage broker. Well, maybe it was when I bought this house. Anyhow, doesn't matter. I always talk to more than one mortgage broker. And so I found, I forget when it was, but this was kind of like an aha moment for me. So I had 2 mortgage brokers competing for my business. And I told them, I'm like, look, I'm shopping around. I want the best deal, right? It may not be the best price, but I want the best package that you can offer me. So bring me something that's coming to the table, because I'm getting offers. So don't bring me something that isn't your best, because if someone beats you, I'm not interested in negotiating with you after that, because you really didn't give me your best after I called you on it. Like, I don't have time to go do this back and forth. So I had these mortgage brokers coming up with some stuff. And, the first one I got in and I sent it, I'm like, hey, this is what this other person sent me. Can you meet it or beat it? If not, that's cool, but, thanks. And he called me back and he's like, hey man, I got their offer, and, I can do this, and this, and we can probably beat that offer by at least $2,000 out of pocket.
Wow.
And that was like a 20-minute conversation. And I said, man, I just made, $1,000, a couple thousand, I don't remember the specific, but it was over $1,000 that I felt like I made.
And that's just because you asked. There was nothing else to it.
Just a 20-minute phone call. I was 100% honest. I said, this is a competition for my business. It was probably $150,000, $200,000 loan or something. And if I remember correctly, I ended up having to come to the table with $1,200 to close everything. Like, that was all of it, which oftentimes I mean, I've seen like $3,000 in closing costs is not out of the question for those types of deals. And I don't know how he came up with it, but it it worked. And I thought, oh man, I just asked a couple of questions and I made a couple grand in 20 minutes. Like that is the right hourly rate to get, you know? And they had good interest rates and good amortization. All that stuff was great. And so that's, I guess, a little bit different. Like you don't know what they want. They just want the business. And now you're just kind of fishing to see who's hungry, you know, because you can get a mortgage loan from 500 different people. And
you can go back and listen to our financial planning podcast with Jeremiah Pizzana, and you can contact one of those guys, and they can also help you with ideas such as what you just talked about, or even give you those contacts.
Right. People that have already proven. And that's another thing, that when I got these guys, they were recommended. One I had used before, and that was the guy that had told him, I'm like, bring me your best deal because I'm shopping and I love you and you're great. But if you don't bring me the best deal, then I'm just not going to use you. And so he gave me a deal that was not that good. And then he's like, hey, well, we can do, and I'm like, no, dude, like you kind of broke my trust, or at least not really broke my trust, but I set the rules and you didn't play by them. So I'm not interested in, doing business with you. Right. When someone else is like, no, this is what it is. I'm shooting you straight. I can't go any lower. This is it. So.
Well, I remember, back in the day in economics in high school, right? They always talked about the car buying. They always said, hey, pick 5 car dealerships.
Yep.
Make sure you don't call them. They want you, they say fax it. And that was way back in the day. Sorry that I just aged myself. But
was that with your pager? Were you?
I wanted a pager back in the day, and I never got one.
Well, you could probably, I don't know, check eBay, man. Maybe you can still get one.
Just carry the...
Man, some days I think I'd prefer a pager. Less people contacting me. It's like, I'll page them.
It's just another way for you to ignore my text.
Exactly.
Anywho, so they would say, send out this fax to 5 companies, describe exactly what you want on it, what's your best price. Make sure it's your best price because I'm going to eliminate a few dealers based on this. Meanwhile, while you're waiting on the responses, you go to one of the other places you don't care about and you test drive the vehicle. You go in, you test drive it, and you walk out and leave and be done with it. No information exchanged. So anywho, after you get all those faxes back, you find out who offers the better ones and you knock it down to the 2. You ignore everybody else. Those 2, you say, hey, I've been offered this. Can you beat this? And you send it to both of them. And then you take it from there.
Yeah.
But I've had other people that have told me that they've gotten much better deals than I've ever seen or heard of because that tactic never worked for me. But that's what the economics teacher in high school told me. So,
I mean, it's
I guess I suck at negotiations when it comes to that.
I mean, it's definitely better than no tactic for sure. And I think just like having a name for this negotiation, right? And thinking about it like a game. One of the awesome times that I had was we talked about side hustle. One of my side hustles was flipping cars. And
like with a forklift or?
No, but that, I don't know, that could be fun. No, just like finding these cars that are pretty beat up. And at the time, it wasn't like I was, buying Corvettes and flipping them, right? But just finding these cars that were around $1,000, checking them out, seeing if there was some little things that I could fix and then sell. And I like driving different cars too. So, for me to just own a car for a little bit was fun. And I remember that there was an Acura RL, and the guy wanted like $1,700. And I told my buddy, he's a business guy, and he loves negotiation. He's like, hey man, what else are we going to do on a Saturday? Let's just go negotiate with this guy and see what we can get him to sell it for. So I show up. It's an old car, I think like 200,000 miles, but the interior was good. And I'm like, all right. So I'm looking underneath it and it's leaking coolant, like right now. And I'm like, that's not a good sign. If a car's leaking coolant, you know that it's leaking. And if a car runs out of coolant, it overheats, warps the head, toast engine. Not good for a car flipper, right? Now I'm either having to sell a car that's busted or you just don't know, right? So, but a car, you can almost call any junkyard and get them to come pick up a car for $400 just because any junkyard can part it out for at least that, right? So that's kind of $300 to $400 is a good deal. So we go, I see that it's leaking, and I know this is a business for me. I don't care about your car. And I know that this guy's got to sell it though, right? Like he's hungry to sell it or he wouldn't have it up for sale. So when I realize and point out that it's leaking, he claims that he doesn't know. So I'm like, okay, dude, your car's leaking. I'm not really interested. And he's like, well, it's leaking, but I didn't know. And it just started. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Right. And so me and my buddy, I'm like, dude, this isn't going to work. I'm like, let's just go right in front of the guy. And the guy said, well, what would you give me for it? And I was like, man, I don't want to give you anything for it. It's leaking. It's probably busted. And he's like, no. I mean, listen to it run. And I'm like, okay, it's not blowing smoke. And like, look, man, I'm not going to give you over $800 for this car. And he's like, oh, dude. And I'm like, look, man, it's just too much risk for me. So we get back in the car, and my buddy's like, he's not going to let us go. He's going to call. And so we're like starting to pull out of the parking lot, and I get a call from the guy. So, okay, I'll do it. And anyway, I picked up that car for $800, and which it was a pretty good car. I drove it quite a bit, and but the art of the negotiation was like, if you can find an issue with something, then that kind of gives you an upper hand if they're motivated to sell. And I know when you're selling a car, because I've been guilty, like, what's the wife in there saying? Like, you need to get that out of my driveway. That's, right? Like, that these things are happening. And so you can play on that because you know what they want. And if you kind of make a game out of it, then it just makes it a lot more fun. And then when you win, you win. And if you don't, then what did it cost you? It cost me a drive and some hangout time with my buddy.
Man. So I ended up looking up before we did the show. I ended up looking up a guy that's a negotiation expert. Mm-hmm. His name is Ed Bardow. It's Brodow. And he actually lists some of the best secrets too. Mm-hmm. And he gives more details about them. But it starts out number 1. Don't be afraid to ask what you want. Then shut up and listen. Do your homework. Always be willing to walk away. Mm-hmm. Do not be in a hurry.
Yep.
Aim high and expect the best outcome. Focus on the other side's pressure, not yours. Mm-hmm. Show the other person how their needs will be met.
Yeah.
You talked about that.
Yeah.
Don't give anything away without getting something in return. And the number 10 was don't take the issues or the other person's behavior personally.
For sure.
So we actually ended up covering pretty much all of these in all the examples we gave, except for probably the homework part.
Yeah.
That to me, finding out the needs and wants of that employer that you talked about before, that would fall under homework, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But it's definitely something you should know ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And that can be part of those questions you ask in advance when you start that interview.
Yeah.
Why is this position available? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Oh, you just had a big turnover?
Yeah.
Oh, this person's pregnant? Whatever it may be.
Last guy quit because he had a terrible boss. Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think that's another huge benefit to online. I'll share one other story about some car negotiations because I just love car negotiating. I mean, to me, I love cars and I love negotiating. So when I'm negotiating to buy a car, it's just it's a fun thing for me. And I do my homework, right? So I'll go. So this last car that I bought was a Land Rover. And it was at an Infinity dealership, and I'd been looking for the car that I wanted. I knew what the prices were, and when I saw this car, I knew that already it was a good value. And so I know that a car dealer wants you to go and drive the car because you got some passion crazy guys who, once I drive it, I'm like, I got to have this thing. So I know that, and I'm like, I'm not coming in. So I'm emailing these guys like, I like this car. I want to negotiate the price up front because I don't want to go in there and spend all day and sitting there and then being like, oh, I don't want to spend another Saturday sitting in a dealership. I'll pay you whatever you want. So I'm emailing back and forth. Finally, the guy calls me and I'm like, look, I don't know who the normal people you deal with are, but I will walk. If you don't do what you say you're going to do when I come in here, just on principle, I'm out. And I like your car, but I'm out because I'm just nuts like that. So I go in there and I told him originally, I'm like, I'm not paying over 30 grand for this car. And anyway, they're like, yeah, 3150 is the best thing that we can do. And I'm like, well, we don't have a deal, man. And so finally the guy's like, oh, I'll get my manager. I'm like, yeah, you need to bring your manager because I told you I wasn't doing this and you assured me that we could make it. Well, but my manager, I'm like, bring him in here. Anyway, so as we're walking in there, the guy's like, I'm telling you, man, this guy, he's a negotiator, but I like the game. I'm like, okay, they're really going to try to close me on it. And so we're sitting in there in the office and I'm like, look, 30 grand. I said that was the number. You guys aren't meeting it. I told you that up front. Car's great. I'm ready to make a deal. You guys are messing this up. You got a Land Rover sitting in your Infinity dealership and it's going to stay here, And they're like, who are you? Like, nobody does this. And like looking back, I felt good, but then I was also thinking like, they're just playing to my ego, like feeling like I'm getting something, And the guy's like, look, it's worth it. Look at the blue book. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I don't care about your blue book. I'm not paying over 30. And they're like, well, why is that the number? I'm like, it doesn't matter. But I told the wife that I was coming in here and I was getting this car for 30 grand. And, I'm not going to go back and tell her. And they're like, oh, I see who wears the pants in the family and all this stuff, right? And I'm just loving it. I'm like, it's not about that. It's about me honoring my word and doing what I said I was going to do. And you guys are not going to change that. And they're like, okay, well, the best thing that we can do is 30,500. And I'm like, no deal. We're not doing it. I said 30 grand when I sent you the email, 2 weeks ago or whenever it was. And they're like, look, that's our final offer. And at this point, I'm like, am I really going to lose the car that I want that's already a good value for $500? Right. So now they're like just trying to get something. And I said, look, oil changes on this thing are expensive. How much do y'all charge for an oil change? And they're like, oh, it's like $100. I'm like, okay, give me 5 free oil changes. And then I can go in and tell the wife that I got a good value, that I did what I said. And then you can get a little extra cash. And they're like, done. And we shook on it. So it was so much fun, man. Mm-hmm. And, but I saved a lot of my time through the email and through the phone conversations and then just sticking to my guns. And then later the sales guy told me, he was like, literally, we made no money on this car. He goes,
oh, that's the famous words they always say.
But it was after. So I'm like, whatever. He's like, I mean, I got my commission, but I don't think that the place made any money. And I'm like, well,
they actually have a whole bunch of different spiffs for how many they sell and all this. They get extra little things. I actually used to be a car salesman back in the day.
Oh, yeah?
Believe it or not.
One of those like greasy-haired used car guys? Or
yeah. I mean, I greased my hair as much as I could. And if you were listening to this, I am bald. There's nothing up there. But I remember they always wanted us to do the 4 squares, the 4 boxes. Did they do that with you?
No, I don't know about the 4 boxes.
Okay, so that I might be missing up on one of these, but they would put in one corner your monthly payment, another corner it's your interest rate, another box they will put the terms, like how long,
right,
of like 7 years or whatever, and then the other box is the cost of the car. Mm-hmm. He's like, and they tell you, they train you on this, I can change any of these but what really matters is what you pay per month, right? And most people are like, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they ask you, what are you looking for? And they adjust just the one box. But the problem is they can increase your monthly. They can lower your interest.
Right.
Do whatever you want to get to your box.
Yeah.
But what they would always train you is you find out their number, say it's 500. You come back after you talk to your manager.
Yeah.
And you say, well, I can't do 500. We're really looking at like 560. Is that going to work? And then if you're smart and pay attention, you'll ask, what are all the 4 boxes?
Sure.
And that's where you really find out whether or not you're getting the shaft.
Yeah. And I guess that's the other thing that I would say too, is that if you come to any negotiation with the money, then you're only negotiating on the product, right? So with the Land Rover illustration, I had a check from my bank. So in that negotiation, I'm showing them the check. Like, all I have to do is fill out the number here, guys. You know, this is all on y'all. If you don't make this deal, it's you. It's not like me getting qualified. You're not going to upsell me on some financing deal. Like, this can be done right this second. I'm just waiting, to make sure that this number's right. And so I think that helps you, as opposed to like going in there and ended up getting some 17% loan or crazy. But it happens,
Yeah. But, the key is with car dealerships, once you're in there, you don't leave very easily.
Right.
And they always said to the salespeople, they were like, if they come in here, they cannot leave without either buying a car or talking to the manager.
Yeah.
If they do, you're getting written up. I mean, they were extreme on it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's one of those things. I remember one time I grabbed the person by their arm and I said, I really want you to meet somebody. And in my head, I'm like, you coming over here. I'm not getting written up.
Yeah.
But now let's go back. So we've given a lot of examples on jobs and cars, but there's stuff dealing with everyday business, especially for you in marketing. Mm-hmm. And then even if you have kids, you've got to do this constantly. Do the dishes. Well, I don't want to. Can I do something else? Mm-hmm. You can get grounded. How about that?
Yeah, as the parent, you can have the upper hand like that. Yeah, no, I'm glad that you brought that up because it's so true, right? We're in a constant negotiation, and I think, I mean, you can tell me what you think, but I'm always thinking, what does this person really want? And then starting there, right? Like, I don't know if this is like a good thing to talk about on the podcast, but
right.
Like, look, you're married, right? You're a guy, and you would like to spend some quality time with your wife, right? You just go grab her by the hair and like tell her what's going to happen, right? Or, which is, I guess, it's forceful negotiation tactics. Or you can think like, what does this person really want? Does this person want, a little bit of romance? Okay. If that's the case, right? What can I give? Can I light a candle at dinner? Right? Can I go wash the dishes after dinner? Is that going to put my wife in a better mood? And just like understanding what that other person wants. And I think that that's huge.
Oh yeah, baby.
Right?
Do you like them sparkling?
Hey man, I challenge any husband that doesn't normally do the dishes, go wash the dishes and, or whatever, just bust out the vacuum spontaneously or whatever it is and see how far that goes, right? Because now you're, it's more like a chess game, right? You're kind of like, okay, what do I need to do to get what I want, right? A negotiation is that. Even if I'm trying to tell you, hey, Jesus can save your soul. Like you need to get on this Jesus train here. It's a good thing, right? It's a good thing that I want, but I can't just grab someone and like throw them in a baptistry and be like, I baptized him or what? Like it doesn't work like that.
I'm going to have to take this link for this video, and we're going to have to disable it from your Wi-Fi. That way Heather can't see it.
No, I mean, but that's the reality. Same with the kids. You know, it's like, what is it that they want? And if I ask them to vacuum, if I ask them to wash the dog, you know, what are the things that they're wanting? Who is it that they want to be? You know, if you have a kid that really wants to be helpful, you know, but I don't want to wash the dog. Well, man, it would really be helpful if you did this right now, instead of just saying you're washing the dog. It's like, and then I can come tell John, Taylor washed the dog yesterday. I mean, go feel his fur. Man, she is so helpful. Right now I'm planting seeds for the next time the dog's all muddy. Taylor, can you go wash the dog?
I always like it best. I want an Xbox. I want whatever. Okay, what do I need done? The car, the bathroom.
But, and teaching them that too, I think is a good way to, you know, I think that these are good things that children need to be made aware of, you know, because the last thing that I want, you know, a fear of mine is like, you know, like I brought up, you know, Jesus. Like, I need to be able to negotiate with my kids to believe in God and be planting the seeds to get what I want, which is making sure that they have a relationship with God. And so I need to be thinking about these things where, like, a lot of it's out of control, out of our own control, right? I can't like, oh, I got this check from the bank. It doesn't help with the kids and and that influence. And so I think that,
But as they get older, it does.
well, well, that may be true. But like relationship stuff, you can only buy that for so much before it's just fake. And when it's not authentic, you know, it only lasts for so long. So I think just to plug How to Win Friends and Influence People is a great book to read on this. It's not just about negotiating, but it's, you know, just a philosophy of understanding about, really, it's helping people get what they want. And when you can help people get what they want, then you usually end up getting what you want too. So
is your foot purple over there?
Man, it's pretty frozen.
I mean, you're sitting at 45 minutes now.
Yeah, it's cold. Once it gets numb, though, it's pretty good. I'd try to show my foot up here on the video, but then I fall over backwards and make the YouTube.
Go for it. Do it. Go.
Get stuck on Fail Army.
Oh, man. All right. Well, let's do this. I know we didn't talk about it beforehand, but the number one best tip for negotiations, what is it? Is that gonna work for you?
Well, let's see.
Okay.
Now it's time for our deciding factor.
Who's going first? Is it me? Are you going first? You go.
I will go first then.
All right.
So I think based on the first example that I gave and what I have seen and heard from both us and what we read, I think the absolute best thing you can do is ask. Doesn't matter what you're asking for. Even he said in his, Ed said on his site and in his books, aim high. Okay. So you have nothing really to lose. And if you lose it, then it wasn't meant to be is my theory, right? God has a plan for you. It obviously wasn't that. And I've had that with a few jobs where I said, you know, hey, I want $200,000. I didn't have any more of that interview. So I overshot. Okay, well, that's fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be, you know?
Yeah.
Or maybe there was something about that job that I was just like, it's okay. It doesn't grab my attention.
Right.
I can, if they give me this ridiculous amount, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's ask. And it's not confrontational. Just to say, what about, or I really need this, you know, because worst thing I could say is, oh, I can't give you 70,000. I can only do 68,000. Okay. Well, whatever. I mean, you're talking a $2,000 difference. You still have to make the choice. Is that right for you, your family, whatever? Simple stuff.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's great. And actually, that's what I was going to say. But since you took it, I won't say it. But that was back to my $800 Acura. That was one of the things that my business buddy said. He goes, if you don't say a number that you're a little about, like embarrassed to say, he's like, it's not low enough. And so I was thinking, I could give this guy 950. And I'm like, but I'm comfortable doing that. Why don't I just say 800? And I was like, with confidence, I'm like, man, most I'll give for this 800. And it like hurt for me to say it, but I asked and I got it. So to your point, I think that's it. One of the big books that I read was by Kurt Mortensen. It's called Maximum Influence. He has a podcast, and it was a great book for me. I read it right before one of my interviews, and it was a great book that I would say really helped me gain that confidence. And so he talks about a lot of little details. Like one of the things that can throw people off in a negotiation is even hair out of place. So like somebody who has like some ear hair, or, they miss a spot shaving, it affects your ability to influence them. And he goes into a lot of things, but like even the color shirt you wear, he talks about what would be the best color shirt to wear to get the best possible.
Does it show like they're not detail oriented enough because they left a patch?
It's all these subconscious clues, right? Like one of the things that you can lose influence in is not having direct eye contact. And he would go into something like, well, if I'm looking behind you, in your gut, you're like, why is he looking behind me? Is there a wolf back there? Is there a tiger? Or maybe my face is ugly and he just doesn't want to actually look at my face. Or, maybe they're just not engaged. And because they're not engaged, maybe they're not a good fit for this, or maybe they don't really love me, right? You're out on a date, not a job interview. And he talks about all these things that the way, I interpret it's like all happening in your gut. You're not really conscientiously thinking about those things, but after the interaction, you're kind of like, like you're kind of just this meh, right? Instead of that direct eye contact where you're like, no, this is the number that I need, or, oh yeah, you're so beautiful and I love this meal and everything is just perfect, instead of like gazing off into the, the abyss. And so anyway, he irons out all of these little details. And so since you took my like number one tip, my number one tip is going to be go read How to Win Friends and Influence People and Maximize Your Influence from Kurt Mortensen, and go to your next negotiation. I told people after reading this Maximum Influence that book over the span of 5 years made me over $60,000 because of how I went into 2 job interviews and negotiated my salary and my position. And that's very real to me. So thank you, Kurt. And because, paying the $5 or the $10, it's an audiobook too. Will certainly reap the rewards if you're willing to ask and you're willing to, shave your ear hair and, get everything set up right and follow his guide. It can be huge. So,
there was a book I read back in the day for relationships that was, what was it called? It was Who Would I Be Without My Story? Did you ever read that one?
No, but I like the title.
Man, it is a great book, especially for relationships. If you are fighting or have some issues you need to work out, it basically teaches you stop making up these scenarios in your head that the other person might be going through, or their side of the story.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it could actually apply in the negotiation is stop making all these stories up like what if, and cause you to hesitate. Stick to your steps.
Interesting.
You see what I mean?
Yeah. No, I like it. I mean, and that's certainly...
Now, this guy does talk about focus on their pressures and not your pressures. So maybe hand in hand.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, this has been a good topic, John. I think if people, it's just so easy, and it's like you have to do it, and so why not be good at it? And I think that these are, again, one of these things that when I brought up the topic, John, it's like no one's teaching a negotiation class in school, and I mean, I'm living proof that just a little bit of negotiation training can yield so much fruit. So, I mean, honestly, if all it took was to read a couple of books and you can totally transform your income or your profits, it's totally worthwhile. And so I hope that people listening will really think into that and, tune it up. And now I'm thinking it's probably been a decade since I read this Maximize Your Influence book. And,
Time to read again.
I know. Yeah. I'm all fired up. Like, I need to sharpen my skill set.
Well, guys, we've got several guests coming up. We've got some weird stories or topics that you probably will not hear on most other podcasts or even the news, right?
Yeah, well.
So we'll see about those. But we got more coming for you. Appreciate everything. We love that you're listening. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. We love everything we can get, bad or good. We had that one comment, man. He made a comment about us, and I just said, hey, I'll take the bad. I don't care. Yeah, and it's good.
Good times.
But say bye.
Adios.
This has been another episode of The Deciding Factor, giving you food for thought on real life issues. Be sure to click, like, and subscribe to this podcast, as well as all your big social media outlets, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't forget to check out our website at thedecidingfactorpodcast.com and give us comments and feedback. Until next time, stay safe and remember to keep an open mind.